Okay, here we go.
Test, 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 test.
Roll music?
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic and other stuff too.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley. It's so funny that, and Mandee, I was sitting there, you know, I love professional hockey. And this season, what used to be the Phoenix Coyotes, because of financial things and just a cluster of financial things in Arizona, became the Utah Hockey Club. And that's what they're called, Utah Hockey Club, because we can't decide a mascot. But it was kind of cool because they have all these first things going on for their game. I believe it was Thursday night, even though the person was with the franchise, who scored their first goal, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where we kind of dovetail into Lou Shackley. Because Lou, I mean, have you ever considered yourself, I mean, sometimes we have these events that are real close to us, but when you were doing, mornings, Larry and Lou on KYKX, I mean, a true East Texas broadcast pioneer, did it register at the time, or was just, we're doing the radio show and you know how those things go?
Oh, heavens no. I had no idea. The only time I had ever spoken publicly was at PTA and all the schools my kids went to. I was president. That way I could say yes or no. And people would do. So I was kind of bossy, and that has not left me. I'm still bossy.
You know, one thing you haven't brought up, Chuck.
What's that?
Is our connection.
Oh.
You left that part out.
This is my bonus daughter.
And she's my bonus mom. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to hear a lot of these stories over the years, but never had an opportunity or never made time to sit down and record the stories with Lou from when she was on the air, because we have that in common. And it's something that people still remember in the community in Longview, especially. Still, a lot of people still come up to her and, compliment her over the years, don't they?
Yes, just last week.
Oh, tell us.
Oh, neat.
Number one, let me back up just a little bit. My husband does a lot of fishing. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. And he won second place last year, right? And so up until then, I was known as, hey, Hirsch, that's Lou, the original Lou on KYKX. Did you? And they would say, oh, really? And then they would switch and say, her husband won second place. He is the fisherman. And I'm thinking, so now I've been knocked out of first place. He is now first place in the family.
And she's referring to the Big Bass Bonanza that they kicked for, 3 or 4 decades now? Dad's in the background. How many years have you fished it, Dad?
Oh, I fished I fished all of them, but maybe 2, and they started back in the mid-70s.
Yeah.
75, 76,
Yeah.
somewhere along in there.
So they started back in the mid-70s, he said, 75, 76, and he's fished all but 2 of them, which is my fault. Because I worked for the company at the time, and they wouldn't allow him to fish. They felt like the management at the time felt like it was a conflict of interest.
You'd put in the fix.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to do with
an extra weight in a big bass or something like that.
No, I'm not slipping weights in anything. I got nothing to do with what's going on out on the water. And I was never anywhere near where they actually weigh in the fish.
Yeah.
They would in a company and officially weigh them and things like that, right? So the radio DJs didn't have anything to do with it. But management at the time felt that it was an issue. So
it was hilarious.
Because he could win.
Yeah.
Which he's proved now, because he's come in second this last year. So they really were concerned that would be an issue and somebody would say that, I had something to do with it.
When did you and Larry do mornings? When did that, or let me back up a little. What was your radio experience prior to KYKX?
None whatsoever.
Wow.
Let me tell you, I was working part-time for an insurance man, answering the phone when he wasn't in, and I had to be at his place of business. Rusty Reynolds walked in one morning because the insurance man and Rusty were good friends, and he introduced himself to me. And he said, "Where's the boss?" And I said, "Well, I'm here." And he said, "Well, no, I really would like to see Mr. Cordell." I said, "Okay, he'll be here in about 5 minutes." And he said, Have you ever listened to KYKX? And I said, "I don't have time. I've got 3 kids in school and I work until 3. That way I can go and pick them up from school." That was important to me.
Yeah.
And Rusty said, "Why don't you come in when you get off and get the kids settled and let's do a voice check?" And I said, "A what?" And that was my invitation to come to the radio station. When I got through with the voice check, and all I did was to say my name and why I was there, and kind of bossy.
Yeah.
And
but what he was looking for, I'm sure he probably had you read a news story or something, and so he could hear something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those of us that when you hear that, it's something you can't describe it, but you say, it's like when I first heard Mandee on KYKX, and I still tell the story to this day. She did call letters in and call letters out, and the thing that stuck, I said, okay. It wasn't like I could even verbalize. It was somebody taught her something, and she listened. And I'm sure what Rusty heard is a friendly voice, because that's what radio is all about, having a friend on the radio. And so he has
confident. Yeah, she has a natural confidence that's hard to miss, and charisma. I'm sure and you can hear those things in a voice.
Yeah.
And I think he recognized it in her.
So okay, but you're in there for the voice check. How does that morph to Larry and Lou? Bring us on that. How do you make those jumps?
He had already decided he wanted a man-woman talk show / play music. Talk to the local people.
Yes.
We talked to a lot of young people because my youngest daughter was cheerleader at Longview High School.
Okay.
And so we knew everybody there, basically. And that was an opening. And I was PTA president at the same time.
A lot of connections there. A lot of connections.
Yes. We would call the kids randomly. They wouldn't know that we were going to be calling. And we'd call before they go to school, or we'd call when they get home from school. But it was like we all became friends. It was not a radio station. It was not work. It was just having kids over at my house. But I was at the station.
To me, and this has come up on the podcast and just in coffee over the years, if radio is done right, and I'm not talking about formatics or rules or playing songs back to back. In your heart, it never feels like work, I always like to, somebody will say to me, and it happens once a week, "Chuck, how you doing?" "I'm here for the free coffee," and figure out what's going on in the world of news and sports and go on from there. Because in my heart, of course, if you said to me, "What would you do if you weren't in radio?" I'd go, "I don't know." At one time I was a property appraiser like 20 years ago. I was kind of trying that, and, I was able to get back in, and it was like, yes, I'll go back. What year was this, by the way, when you got started doing the show?
I've got clippings from the newspaper.
You want me to grab this?
Yes. Yeah. And I believe it was late 1974, 75 for sure. Busy. We had basketball. We had a basketball team, KYKX. I'm a basketball player. Played in high school. Loved it. That was my sport.
What was your nickname for the team? The KYKX, super dribblers or what?
No. We just
the KYKX basketball team.
Mm-hmm. And anybody could play. Could participate. And the captain, quarterback for Longview Lobos, was our coach.
Neat.
Steve Gaddis.
I think what's so interesting about that is, like you were talking about, and KYKX, let's face it, it's, to this very minute, it's always been localized, really, really local, which these days in modern radio is a really tough nut to crack, a real tough one. And the reason why I was asking about the year, Lou, is and I was kind of running things through my head after Mandee and I had a recording session yesterday, and we're, just riffing on a few things. And And the thing that I was thinking about, if this, and I was thinking about 72 or so, but it was not common.
74. 1974.
Yeah. So it was not common at all to have a woman co-host in the morning show, because usually in those days it was, and it's specific, usually rock stations, the female was the midday girl by, like, it was Mandee Fox, spelled with 2 X's. Oh, cool. And she goes up. And she goes up and she makes the 2 points.
Yes, I did. It was fun.
And the defender gets a dose of elbow at Lou Shackley. They call her the boss.
That's right.
How many years did you and Larry do the morning show?
You know what? It was like maybe 2-3 years, very short, because by that time I had 2 daughters, cheerleader in Foster, cheerleader at Longview High School, and my son, the youngest, was playing Little League baseball. And they needed me worse than the radio station, and that's what I told Rusty Reynolds.
You are a wonderful, wonderful mom.
Yes, I am. I still am.
She is.
Because that's what that, because I'd always heard about the original Larry and Lou, and then they went on with another set, and of course, and Mandee and I never talked about this because sometimes over coffee, just, we go on to other things. But so that's the one thing I wanted to ask is, what happened? Because if you've got that winning formula, obviously, that's what it is. Because on the other hand, and we all say this in conversation when we've talked, Mandee and myself, and here this morning on the show, is that sometimes life puts its foot down and you say, okay, I have to follow life versus my passion or what I want to do, because everything else and everybody else is that more important,
Yeah.
So after you did, you stepped away from KYKX, you're taking care of your family. Was Kicks your only radio gig?
Yes.
Do you miss it? Did you miss radio?
Not really. I'm a firm believer, Chuck, that everything happens for a reason. But we have to be ready for that change.
My wife tells me that all the time.
I loved every minute I was there, but I loved every minute with my kids too. It's just one of those things that I feel like I look back and I say, okay, our life is like a jigsaw puzzle. Anytime something happens, you find the spot, plug that piece in.
That almost reminds me of the quote that Joe Walsh had on the history of the Eagles, where he was talking about, you spread your life over, and, at the time you think it's this huge, crazy disaster, but when you kind of take this aerial view, maybe 30, 40 years, and look at it, it's this beautiful novel, but at the time, sometimes it's pretty rocky. Larry Gunner, he was your partner, correct?
Yes.
So
he had several Lou's after me. None. Peppy Blunt. I was in the elevator with him one time, and he said, "Lou, let me copyright your name because they're going to use it. They're going to use it and make big money." And I said, "Peppy, nobody listens to us. Nobody's going to listen." I never saw him, but what he didn't say. Are you ready for me to copyright your name now?
Oh.
It was just a compliment to me,
and a very good compliment, because like I said, I had heard about the original Larry, Lou, and Larry, and so you kind of wondering how these happen. Anyway, that was kind of in my head. I just wanted to mention this real quick. I had the good fortune of working with Larry in 2010 to 2013 when I was at 99.3 Talk FM, and Larry was the Longview rep for our station doing sales, and he was he was wonderful to work around. I saw him maybe 3-4 times a year, and he knew that I loved coffee, so once a year he'd bring over a bag of coffee and set it on the desk, and I'd give him a hug and say, "Thanks, Larry." But can you confirm this about Larry? I had heard when he was the GM at KYKS in Lufkin, that he was really a tough GM. He was, maybe not, tough as far as demanding, and because the Larry I knew was just this sweetheart. And I heard that he was a toughie and, wanted it done and wanted it this way and et cetera, et cetera.
He loved Rusty Reynolds, and that sounds more like Rusty Reynolds than Larry.
Well, you know what? It may be the situation, too, that once you become a manager, that you follow what you've seen and what you've witnessed in an example. I always tell people that, I've worked around news and the information part of radio since 2010, and like at KTBB, whenever I've had to do news, my only examples, good examples, were watching Melissa Kaiser, watching John Sims. And I would tell them both. When John was alive, it wasn't even so much questioning. It was just, watching and going, oh, this is the reason why you do this. Or sometimes one of the first things John told me, he says, never do weather stories. I would look at him like a dog looks at, something, and he goes, because weather changes. And that always sticks on stories in general. They're going to change in 3-4 hours. Don't use them, so we have to change the template. Sometimes, as even as those of us that have done radio, we listen to it with this ear, critical or not. Do you listen to radio? Do you listen to radio these days at all?
Oh yeah.
Do you listen
in
to
fact,
it?
I've got some tapes. I filled in on KEES while they were still in business, and I forget the name of the.
Was it Matt Williams?
Matt Williams.
Matt Williams. She was around Maddie,
yes.
huh? I did mornings
with
with
Matt.
Matt.
The whole show. I said, if I ever am asked to do another show by myself, shoot me.
You were doing talk, right?
Yes.
Were you terrified?
I was scared to death.
I had to fill in on our talks our News Talk 99.3. We were doing a sports show in the afternoon, and it was something to where it was like the early part of maybe, I'm going to say 2012 or something, and Brian Houston went to like the NCAA playoffs, and of course he's breathing like hotel air for 3 days and comes back with strep, and it's like, Chuck, you have to do the show for 3 days. I'd never done that ever, so man, I used everything at my disposal to make it work. But yeah, and I said it was exhilarating and / terrifying, and I don't think I have any recordings of it around. I was like, oh, this is hot garbage. I'll leave this to the side.
I've got some of my radio taped on a little cassette, and my son called one morning while I was on the air, and he said, Mom, if I hear you say that's fantastic one more time, I'm going to throw my radio in the trash. Now find another word.
And did you say, if you call me one more time? Okay, so when you were summoned for Matt, what was the topic? What was the genre of talk, or was it kind of community radio for you there?
It was community. People calling in, griping about things, complimenting things. I preferred the compliments rather than the griping, but you tolerate a little bit of both.
Did you have to do Tradio at all?
That, okay, I worked with Paula Prince.
Yes.
While Doug Murray was on the air.
Yeah.
I love that man. His little wife used to be a waitress at the Rio.
Paul and I had worked together. We worked together at KNUE in the 80s, and 97 to about 2000 we worked together over at KYKX. But I love Paula. Paula's one of those people that I say, whatever you want to say about her as a broadcaster, a great broadcaster, she's just this wonderful, wonderful human being.
Are you familiar with Warren Bradley?
Yes, we know
the birthday.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then we had the Lulu Award for people who made a big flub. I have the last one that was supposed to be given away.
Uh-huh.
The name of the person that won this on the inside with their phone number, and I've kept it all these years.
The Lulu Award.
Yes.
And this is like big flip. Awesome. Awesome.
It's a ceramic, kind of like a monkey, a ceramic monkey, and it's got the name there in the
I've wondered if that person is still
Around?
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
I mean,
So tell me about this award. Did you make a flub on the air? Is that how it became the Lulu Award?
No, that was my going away when
Oh, okay.
they said, "Here, take this, so you'll always remember us."
Oh,
Yeah.
but it's
Oh,
still
that's funny.
sweet. That's still
Yeah.
sweet.
It was it was a it was a fun run. I I I would not take for it.
As a man who's well traveled in the business, it beats having to say, "Hey, will you turn your keys in right now, please?"
Well, I know she was telling me when I was over here a couple of weeks ago and I invited her to do this. We started sharing memories and you told me there was something that you did that got a bit that you did about the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
this lady from Hallsville,
Mm-hmm.
her husband made the remark that, oh, what's his name? Howard Cosell made a remark on the radio that Howard, no, that
We have the newspaper clipping, so we're taking a quick look at it to remind
I
ourselves.
get that.
that was
Newhouse?
Robert Newhouse, the running
on
back.
October the 8th, 1975. A remark was made that he is not a good runner at all. Howard Cosell did that.
Howard? Wow.
Yes. So then we came to his defense and we had a roll of toilet tissue, a new one, of course, and the people who agreed with us that Howard shouldn't say that about a local kid.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
kid back then.
And Newhouse
And-
was good.
Yeah, Newhouse was very good. And so then people would come by and sign their name. We rolled that toilet tissue up within a week with signatures and mailed it to Howard Cosell.
I bet you he loved that.
Yeah, and I've got all the clippings because my brother lived in Dallas and he saw where this radio personality in Longview, who he didn't even know what I was doing, said, "Is that you that's causing all the uproar?" And I said, "Yep, that's me, always causing problems."
But
So
that's
it was
a
in the-
wonderful radio that's a wonderful radio stunt though.
Yeah, she's got the clipping from the Dallas Times-Herald on Tuesday, November 4th, 1975.
Oh wow.
He has fans howling was the headline.
Oh
Yeah.
cool.
Isn't that neat? I mean, you've got more stories than that, but that was a big one.
Yeah,
They got a lot of attention.
that was nationwide, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well no, and you get that. I mean, when you're, in a small market, that is a huge deal to get something like that, whether it's in a, national publication or the,
I
Dallas
was
papers,
also
yeah.
a judge at the tobacco spitting contest for the. I know it.
At the Gregg County Fair.
I wore a white
Oh.
pantsuit and it was spattered by the time I got home.
Oh
I bet
gosh.
it was. You know, that's something that doesn't happen anymore at the Gregg County Fair. There's a lot of contests, but tobacco spitting,
No.
we've moved on.
It'd be maybe chili contest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it'd
Also
be-
something you wouldn't want to judge in a white pantsuit just in case.
Oh no, it would be wear everything black. Chili blends into that easily.
And we stayed connected. Excuse me. We stayed connected with the young folks, and they loved being called on the radio.
Sure.
For their name to be mentioned, oh, it was just Holly bore the door. I mean, it was,
Well, Lou, how did you do that? How did you integrate them? Did you do like random requests, or how did you integrate them on your radio show?
because I would be at all the basketball games, all the football games,
And just talk about it?
and I knew all the kids.
Okay. And so
Basic.
you just talked about it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
got okay. I get that.
It was like best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the way
I see
radio's
them
supposed to
now
be.
at the football games. They'll say, "Oh, I remember coming over to your house after school. You were the stay-at-home mom, and we knew there was always food and fun times at your house."
Sure.
Wasn't there country music artist that used to come over and watch your girls practice cheerleading in the front yard?
Yes.
Who was that? Was it Ricky Lynn Gregg?
Ricky Lynn Gregg.
Yeah.
If I Had a Cheating Heart, was that the song he did?
Oh, don't get me lying.
I
don't remember.
I'm trying to remember because he had that song it was a pretty big hit for him. It was top 10. Ricky Lynn Gregg. How about that?
Ricky Lynn Gregg.
Yep. Yep. So lots of memories, lots of people that she was connected to. I'm curious about this. I know you were at the games, so you knew all the kids. How did you choose who you were going to call and pick on? Did you give them a heads up and let them know, or did you just ring their house in the morning and surprise them?
Most of the kids would say, call me next.
Okay.
Call me.
Yeah.
At such and such time. My mom won't care.
My mom won't care. So did you ask them about the big game or what was going on at school?
We would, if they seemed interested. If they were, the football guys loved it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Marshall was the big rival of Longview Lobos.
Yeah.
And my daughter was dating a football player from Marshall.
And so, like, if you were calling, let's say, somebody's house, you could put them live on the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat. Yeah, that's why request shows do well. That's why any type of show on radio where you can have some sort of public opinion ultimately does well because they get featured. Which is
so. Did you pick on the boyfriend or no?
I did.
Okay,
I did. I called him the little guy from Marshall that plays football. I didn't call the name out. I just said, "Here's the little guy from Marshall Mavericks."
Wow, you leaned into that pretty well.
But they both went on to. He was my pick for her to really fall in love with, but she just fell in friends.
Just a friends thing. It didn't take. Well, these things happen.
What other memories do you have of being on the air? Anything big that happened?
La Costa.
Okay, what? Tell us that story.
She was an up-and-comer star that really did not make it big time. Mm-hmm. But every time she would come through Longview, she would come out to the station and visit with me. We'd have coffee.
Is that Tanya? Was that Tanya Tucker's sister? La Costa. Is that Tanya Tucker's sister? I should.
I think it is.
For some reason, that's ringing some Buddy Lee, big Nashville promo guy.
Yeah.
But for some reason, that rings some bells from my 80s country tour at KNUE and the early 90s as well.
Yeah, and these girls are still around.
Yeah.
One of the great
go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say one of the great things to me about country radio in general is I think over the 35 years that I did country radio, I don't think I ever met a country artist that was rude or anything. They were always humble and kind and, would give you whatever time they could, whether it was recording station liners or whatever. I always just thought that, that it was really sweet, but it was also good business too, Make sure that everybody remembers each other kindly when it came to reporting day to trade magazines and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, go ahead, Lou.
Kind of reminds me of Neil McCoy.
Exactly. Neil's great. Neil was,
great. Just would give you the coat off of his back. Mm-hmm. He's that kind of person.
I think that's one of the things that I've always admired about you, Lou, is that you've stayed connected to the community, even though you haven't been on the air. You moved on from PTA president, obviously, when your kids weren't in school any longer, but you've always stayed in touch with people in the community in one way or another through your work, but also just you're so great at maintaining connections and relationships. And so when somebody like Neil comes along, you're supportive and helpful. And if there's anything you can do to help further them or make an introduction, you do those things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's going to make me cry.
Oh.
That wasn't the intention.
Well, you know what Mandee was pointing out is relationships, no matter if you're in radio or whatever, it's everything. But specifically in radio, too, because, I've said this before, and I learned this as radio was consolidating, that boy, you may be hard competitors on the broadcast field, but everybody tries to stay friends because you may need that person tomorrow.
You were very active in the community with KYKX, and I think that you laid a strong foundation for that to continue. I mean, those kids grew up, and a lot of them stayed in Longview, and then were the people who were spending money with the radio station, right?
Sure.
So it makes sense. It was smart, but I know that's not why you were doing it, but it created that lasting foundation. And then as people came along behind you, they could follow in your footsteps.
I think I followed my mother's guidance as far as dealing with the public. I'm the youngest of 6 girls, and I learned early, if I didn't get my way, I learned how to cry on cue. I could get anything I wanted.
Did that work with Larry too? Or Rusty?
Rusty. Yes, it did with Rusty.
It did with Rusty, yeah. Because I know he could be, I didn't get the opportunity to work with Rusty. He was sort of around when Chuck and I worked together at 99.3, but more as a legacy than he was like around. And so we talked about him, and there were lots of stories about Rusty.
Yeah.
Do you have any that you want to share about Rusty aside from how you were hired?
Not really. That was just, he got me there, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
It was the piece of the puzzle that fit where it was supposed to fit.
Sure. And it's always, we always remember our first, it's Rusty, my first program director, Dwayne Germain in Austin, Minnesota. Those people you remember them fondly because, they took that chance. They said, in my case, it was, I was doing overnights and, doing breaks during the Larry King show and then going to work nights at KAUS. And so it's a big deal. And it's like, Mandee, working at KIX, doing production, doing games, figuring out basic building blocks of broadcasting, whether running a tight board during a ball game and things like that.
Just making sure the commercial air. That's the other thing that Lou did that's different. I think that morning show personalities don't do this anymore. She was sharing this with me when I first got here before we got set up, that she did logs. That was the first thing she did when she came in the morning.
She's trapped. Really? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, there was no automation then, so it doesn't have that urgency, right?
No.
I've
gotten the calls quite a few times, not enough to get fired over, but I would leave somebody off the log that should have been on there. I would get in the car and go to the station at night and make sure that that other thing that I did had the right name, the right spot. It was crazy. There was no computers to say, yeah, that's okay. Go back to sleep.
But you did type everything up.
I typed everything, everything.
But production,
doing commercials and music, all of it in one log.
Rainey's Old West. I'll never forget that name. Rainey's Old West.
Were they an advertiser?
Yes. Yes. But they stayed.
They were there all the time?
They were there all the time.
Wow. Any other advertisers that you remember from back in the day that did something interesting or were like a big sponsor of an event or
the way we got the weather report?
Yeah. How was that?
We would listen to it and then rebroadcast it on the radio. Or we would, to see what the temperature was.
The weather phone.
Yeah.
We did. I did that for years in my first gigs too. Yeah. Also, my first job, we had one of the, I bet you they had it at KIX, one of those Heathkit weather stations that will give you the barometric pressure and everything. And what was great about those is they were accurate to the time, where now, if you want the temperature, you're going to the internet, which just, don't get me started on that, because during severe weather, it's not really your friend, because when you need concise information right now and you're trying to, reload a page to get barometric pressure or whatever, that's a different thing. But my first job, we had to do hourly temperatures, barometric pressure, and winds on a 24-hour log. So if we had bad weather, we could sit there and say, yeah, but the barometer was like this. These winds have gone up like this, and it worked.
Did people care?
Huh? Well,
do people really care?
Yes, but the other thing too is we had it.
It's just the world has changed so much. So, sure. Like by the time I was listening to radio, you weren't talking about barometric pressure. You were talking about whether or not it was going to be hot or cold,
Lou could probably agree to this, and I would bet money on it. Okay. When you were doing logs, Lou, I bet you anything that could be sponsored on Kicks, and specifically weather forecast, were sponsored all the time, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. My first radio gig, 2 an hour, 24/7. They were all sponsored. If we had severe weather, it was sponsored. It was an emergency sheet you pulled out. Severe weather brought to you by. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But you know, and that's the only station that did it. I've gotten surprised over the years that, you know, radio hasn't monetized that. You know, it seems like for the past 20, the golden egg, so to speak, has been how do we monetize the web? You know, and I'd always have been convinced since day one it's because the web has been this wide open thing where it's not like cable, where cable has tiers. I always thought if the web had tiers, probably things would be monetized different, but that's my opinion. I'm not a cable guy, Larry or otherwise, so, you know.
Well, you never had computers in the building when you worked there, did you?
We didn't even know what computers were.
Right.
Nothing.
I think about in 1980 or 79, they became a deal. And the only reason I say that is those were the times where we ended up getting the memo from management. No more smoking in the building. No more smoking in control rooms because the smoke could screw up your equipment. And, you know,
wow.
You'd have people like, oh, man, really? I got to put on like a 6-minute record and go smoke in the back door or something, you know.
Did you cue records or did Larry handle that?
Larry handled that.
He did?
Cue the records up.
Uh-huh.
And he would mess up a few times and he'd laugh. You know, I mean, it was no big deal.
Did it become a bit when he would mess up? Would you kind of pick at it and play with it? Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Did you have a pet name that you could say for Larry when he would mess up?
No.
The reason why I say this is Gary Mason, that Mandee and I both worked with. Gary's pet name, if he did something, would be Bonehead. He'd call me Bonehead. Come on, Chocolate Bonehead.
That's Gary was a good man.
So you worked with Gary too, right?
Yes.
Lovely.
Yes.
Gary Mason. He taught me when I moved there in '97 at Kicks. He taught me how to do digital production, and I just thought the world of him.
Yeah. You know. His wife shopped with me when I worked at Barron's.
Yeah.
Mrs. Barron loved to tell everybody that I was the real Lou. The real one.
There
How long
you
did
go.
you work at Barron?
How long did I work? 11 years.
Wow. And that was from the late 90s or early 2000s?
When we moved back here.
Was that 99? Yeah. So, goodness. I knew it was a long time. And you made you had a lot of connections there. So you had a lot of people come shop with you.
And I did all of their modeling for them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, neat.
From radio to modeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, nobody would say to you, "You've got a face for radio." That would be what they'd say to me. Comb your hair. You have a face for radio. You know, I was kidding your daughter. I said, I'm doing hair and makeup this morning. Ha ha. You know, not that it's going to help. Which is the great thing about these cameras. You know, it's just you have the shirt side up and sweatpants underneath, which is just awesome.
Larry had a lot of female offers.
Oh,
over the phone.
He did.
Yeah. This was. Yeah.
Was Larry single?
He was. Yeah, the whole time he was here, and I don't remember when he remarried.
But so
we just kind of lost touch.
He had women calling him though when he was on the air
because his voice was great.
Mm-hmm. And they had imagined him to look a certain way.
Yes, and he didn't. You know.
But Harry might have had a face for radio.
That's hard.
I'm teasing. I'm being a little harsh. I had similar similar memories of Larry that Chuck did when I worked with him. He was in sales. And at that time, when I worked with Chuck at 99.3 and the Blaze, I was a sales assistant and I did logs like you.
Oh, really?
I did. I scheduled the commercials and made sure that all the sales orders were entered correctly, which is an important piece that a lot of people don't know about radio, because if the money's wrong, nobody gets paid. And so if somebody, doesn't enter the sales orders correctly, then we're in big trouble, because then billing isn't correct and it just kind of runs downhill. But Larry was old school. It's probably the best way to describe it, right, Chuck?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hand wrote all of his orders. And by the time he and I were working together, his handwriting had regressed a little bit. So I had to learn how to speak and interpret Larry.
Yeah.
But he was very generous and kind and would sometimes bring me gifts to say thank you, because I did a lot of the office work for him, and I did more for him than I did for most of the salespeople.
Mandee, when Larry had passed, were you still at the station?
No, I think I had moved on to
Mix?
Mix by that point. Yeah, because I don't remember if I went to see him when he was in the hospital, but I don't think I made it to the funeral.
It was so unique because it was classic radio, because we went to the visitation. Rosanna and I went to it in Longview, and of course, two things were hammered home. Radio people will speak anywhere, but the other, because I said, hey, we're going to go in, give our respects, go get a Whataburger, go home. We left 3 hours later because, Brian and Dave, everybody was there and we were talking, but, they had, Larry there on, how am I trying to say this the best? The coffin was open. His wife, and I forgot her name, sweet woman, had in the coffin, Larry on one arm was a bottle of Jack, her picture on the other side, and somewhere nestled in there was a microphone. And I just looked at it and thought, I just whispered to myself, awesome.
Yeah. No, I was still at the station when Rusty passed, Chuck. I think we all went to that service together.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
and again, saw lots of radio people. Gosh, people like Bob Gamble that he has an agency still in Longview, or
Bob's had that agency going for about 30, 40 years now, I bet. It's been because, he took time to go on the Bull in the morning.
That's right.
Don was doing middays and everything like that. Bob would be somebody to get on there too. I'm just thinking.
We should reach out.
We were just thinking here.
Lou, who do you think we should talk to? You know a lot of people and a lot of history from radio and people in Longview. We've probably focused a lot on Tyler because Chuck and I mostly have worked in Tyler offices, but who from Longview do you think we should reach out to?
Oh dear.
You've listened over the years, even since you've been off the air. Paula, for sure.
Yes.
Paula would be great.
Diane Day.
Yes.
Diane Day.
That's funny. Yeah. My dad can't hear you, but he piped up and said Diane Day at the same time that you did.
Well, I haven't talked to Diane personally. It's been a long, long time, but she's had her experience. She was in San Antonio radio for a while and came back, and so it would be interesting to get, those perspectives.
Her story. I've been very fortunate to have learned from Lou over the years so many things, but probably one of the things that she's taught me the most, her and my dad together as a team, really, from the time I was little, Chuck, that I apply daily in my life now is, to focus on the positive. She just mentioned it, but I think that's a big part of who she is and a big part of what she shared with her family. I mean, she's got an extensive family, 3 kids, not counting her bonus kids.
Yeah.
And they had kids who had kids.
Yeah.
She's got great grandchildren now that she gets to see all the time, and 10 great grandchildren. Wow.
That's a lot of love.
It is a lot of love, and that's something that she, I think, showed when she was on the air with her community and stepping away to be with her family. But she's continued to show as she's worked with people over the years and just provided excellent customer service when she did that. But also, just the little things that she does to show love and to remind us to focus on the positives. All of us and her family and her friends too.
My sweet, dear husband is going through a time right now that we all need to pray for.
Okay.
And He's a fighter. Never hear him say a negative thing about anybody or anything. Everything's going to be good.
Sure.
Everything be good.
Positive thinker, right?
Yeah. Yes. Most positive.
Yes.
Sometimes I get so, no, it's not perfect.
We need to worry.
But then it turns out it is.
But you hope for the best. You just do.
Yes.
You just do.
And you blink an eye. I never thought I would be this old. Never.
You don't look it.
I know. Isn't she gorgeous?
Yes.
Isn't she gorgeous?
Watch out, Richard.
I bet he's thinking about fishing. He's not thinking about this.
He's grinning. Is there anything else that you want to share? Any other memories or reflections?
My grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother lived with us as a single mom.
Uh-huh.
While mother and daddy had 6 girls, 2 bonus sons who were much older. And she always said, those who bring sunshine into the lives of others cannot keep it from themselves. That's what I ended my show with, my last show. So those who bring sunshine into the lives of others cannot keep it from themselves.
That's awesome.
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap this up.
This has been another episode of The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
podcasting,
gear,
and the gearheads that use the gear,
and making money with a hot mic,
and other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.